started, I told you to bring tonight some thoughts because we're going to go over your take-home, which is on risk analysis and risk identification, specifically with RBC resources, email, Angel, online services. You're going to look at assets, what value they have, what is at risk, how much the value is. Number one. Number two, threat agents. Who or what is the source of the threat against the asset? 3, the attack tree, which I have drawn over here on the board. We'll go over that as well. Resolution. Come up with 3 to 5 solutions to resolve each one of these. So, what you're going to do between now and Sunday is come up with a risk analysis of RBC resources. Again, Eagle, online services, and Angel. You're going to look at the inventory of those resources. I'm just going to get you started tonight. Determine what threat agents against those resources that exist. And then 2 or 3, look at the vulnerabilities and how it can be exploited. And then 4, make decisions on what you're going to do. I put in the scenario the website to RBC's academic MyRBC site that most students go to go to all these resources we're talking about. When a person registers at RBC, the question is they're given an account, or the scenario is they're given an account for RBC Eagle, email communication, online services. Whether they know it or not, it's given to them and set up to them within 24 hours. That's the set in place. It's been that way for a number of years. So here's the questions to ask yourself. Is the RBC account password policy secure? Number 2, how can this account password policy be exploited? Number 3, do students know how to change their password? I always ask students, like you might have some classes after tonight, ask around, just ask students in the classroom you have classes with, hey, do you know how to change the password on RBC email or online services? Just kind of query students. You'll be surprised how many do not know. And you'll be surprised how many faculty do not know how to do this. These services are sometimes never used. You'll be surprised how many students never use RBC email, never use online services. And there's some faculty not using Eagle, so there's a number of students that maybe never even touch Eagle, possibly. There's some faculty that use strictly Gmail and Google Docs to their entire classes. And so you might have classes like that you take, possibly. And so because of that, there's authentication setting out there that's default that they never even set or changed from whatever the default was set by that system. That makes sense? They never even accessed it, initialized it to even be prompted to change the password if it asks you to change the password. Okay? So, because a lot of students, when they take classes here, and maybe even faculty like myself who use Eagle a lot, use online services a lot, and RBC email a lot, you'll be surprised how many faculty members and students use none of those resources, or very little. Okay? There's some faculty, like I said, that don't use Eagle. They don't use online services, except to do their grades, and even some of them will do it by hand still and walk it over to admissions. They don't do their grades submitting it like we're supposed to do it. They just do it by paper. Okay? So because of that, there's authentication sitting out there in tandem, and some of these authentication processes need a initial prompt password change, and so that's one of the things you're going to investigate and ask around. Now maybe you know, and probably most of you in here do know, because you're more techie students, but the non-technical students might not have a clue about these questions we're talking about. And you'd be surprised how many don't. Now, the take home for this then, and to tackle it, we're going to kind of go over a scenario on the board to kind of get you armed with what you need to complete the assignment, is you need to tackle the below concerns, and then you're going to submit them, as always, in the Dropbox. And this is actually a screenshot from the Dropbox. So the first step we're going to do together, real quick, and you'll definitely come up with different scenarios, but first inventory the assets and their attributes for the account passwords. Then we'll determine what threat agents are there against the assets and by which threat agents they occur. And then determine whether vulnerabilities exist that can be exploited by surveying the current security infrastructure or lack of security. And then what decisions regarding these need to be made about these risks. Going through a brainstorming session here. I want you guys' feedback on the assets here. We're talking about online services, Eagle, and email. So, what's the asset? Personal. Or who's the asset? Personal. There you go. And there's no wrong answer here as we're going through this, okay? So I'm going to put personal right up here at the top. Somebody else, just blurt it out. Personal. There's more than that. Let's keep going. Yep.
Classroom slots. If you notice, someone has the last seat in a slot. That last seat in a class, you can actually drop them from the class if you got into their online services, so you can take it.
Okay. So class slot. All right. Anybody else? Keep going. We got personal information that's the asset. Now remember, assets have to do with, in this case, it would be, data communication, your student records, everything that entails in your student records, which includes your name, address, phone number, social security number, student ID, all that stuff's in there. So we have personal information, class type of information. Anything else? That's an asset. How about your personal reputation? Your personal, your name is what they used to call it. The weight of your name, the reputation of your name. Your character. There you go. So what do we want to put here? Character?
Could do that, yeah, because somebody could write emails and send them out to everybody exposing a
Right. And there's a term for that. What would be a term for that?
defamation of character.
Defamation of character, slander would be a couple. So we'll just put some assets here. And this character slander, this is pretty much all in the same. All right? So that's in a nutshell, that's a good start. We can add more to that. Let's go to the next. We've got the assets. Now what threats are there? What are the threats against your assets? The assets would be your student records, your communication. So what are the threats? Somebody can do what? Or some entity can do what with this information? What's a threat? That could be a threat against you personally. Identity theft. And you don't need to raise your hand, just kind of speak it out. Identity theft, what else? Come on. Identity theft, what else? There's no wrong answer.
Kind of like what he already said, just bad mouthing.
Okay. So threats, identity theft, character again. Anything else? Is that it? That's the only threats you can think of, identity theft and a character. Could there be any legal ramifications?
Depending on what you sent, yeah, you could.
Yeah, what somebody stole your identity, like at your email account, sent a threatening email to whomever, you're thrown in jail. You're now in the law, you're now in the court system, having to prove that you didn't do it. So there could be the threats, could be actual a record of some type that you have to fight. So a criminal record of some type. All right, so we'll stop there. That's good. Let's go. So we've identified the assets, the threats. Where do they come from now? Where are these threats going to come from?
Internal?
Be more specific. They can be a people. They can be people, or it can be process. So where are they going to come from? People or process, and be specific in those categories, I guess. And I'll just write up here people, process, so you kind of know. So where are they going to come from? We got broad categories, people, process. In the broad category people, what category of people are we talking about?
Person sitting next to you.
Students, right? Students would be. Okay, who else could be in that category? Not just students.
The network administrator.
Admins, who else? Faculty, definitely. Who else? Anybody else you can think of? A few semesters ago, we had actually about 50 emails stolen, accounts hijacked from China. The threat was from China. They actually got onto the website and hacked in the database, got 50 email accounts, and began to sell the data that they gathered from Rock Valley College, and that data was then populated, and there were some identity issues with that as well. So we could say not just internal, but somebody said external, right? So it could be anything external resource whatsoever, because it's a public site, right? It's a public website. Are you blocked in any way to get to my RBC? Are you blocked in any way to get to Eagle? I mean, you have a login screen, but are you blocked to get to those screens? No, so it's pretty public. If anything's visible, it has a tendency or there is a risk of that site or that entity being hacked. Okay? So we could put also on the processes, what do you think about website? Where do they threats come from? Website, the website itself. The website itself could be a source of maybe non-security issues. Things are not as secure as they should be possibly. Okay, so we'll say security on website apps. Website apps we're talking about is what? What website interfaces are we talking about? What URLs, what websites are we talking about?
Online services.
Online services, Eagle, REC, Gmail, right? So now, even though it's Gmail, there are hooks internally that we have on the our end that Gmail reads. What I'm talking about is a new student registers. That has to be hooked into the Google system and authenticated with the Google system and some process set up. So that means Google is hitting somehow our servers for that process to occur. Okay? Now, granted, like I said, within 24 hours once a student registers, they're supposed to be populated in all these entities. RBC email, Eagle, and online services. And so because of that, because Google's an outside resource that we've basically been given for free, that resource, that is, you could maybe say that could be also a risk as well, because we're kind of putting our hands in Google's hands. In essence, Eagle's the same way. It is an outside resource. Students and faculty both are aware of that. There are hooks in there for authentication internally that do hook to the external site. So anytime you have anything external hooking to internal, there are always risks involved. Okay? Because we have to trust the external to be secure and updated as they say they are. And that's not always the case. Okay? Where do threats come from? What weaknesses exist? Okay, you've had a few days to think about it. So let's just start with email, and then we'll go to Angel, and then we'll go to online services. And I'm just going to do one or two word descriptions, most three of the weaknesses that you see. So we'll do email, we'll do Eagle, and we'll do online services. So real quick, let's start with email. What are some weaknesses you see with Google Gmail? Real quick.
Well, obviously, if Google was hacked, and since we're connected,
Okay. So we'll just put down one word. The threat is, or the weakness would be Google maybe, right? Is that good? We'll do Google for that one. Anything else you can think of on the email? Weaknesses. Now let's talk about, I guess we've not talked about yet, the username password scenario for Eagle. Now from a faculty standpoint, I don't have one. It's all internal. I'm internal on email through Outlook and Exchange. I don't have any hooks in Gmail, for the college anyway. I have a Gmail account of my own, personal. The process that you had to go through to find that out and to log in the first time, I know you might have to do some thinking back on that. What was that process like? Was it fairly easy, fairly complicated? Was it easy to understand? Were you given all the information up front? on how to access the account? Did you have to do some investigating to get in the first time? What was your thoughts on that? That first, or maybe I guess your thoughts on Eagle and Angel. That was a big confusion to some students. They had two communication nodes. Eagle was instructor class course related only, and then RBC email for campus related, financial related type of communication. Now, was there anyone here confused about that, or do you know people that go to classes here that were confused about that whole process? Anybody? We had to remind students umpteen times the first few weeks of class to please check, and you saw it on Eagle, to check their RBC email. Well, if they don't go on Eagle, guess what? They never get that prompt. And the students who go to classes that do not use Eagle, which again I said earlier, are quite a few, I found out. I was surprised. And then again I wasn't. Anything new, faculty don't like to use. Okay? It's just the way it is. All right? So, if they didn't go on Eagle, they didn't get the prompt, they didn't check their RBC mail, and now RBC mail is being used for all prompts, for deadlines, financial aid. They've pretty much halted all mail to the students' mailbox to save money. They start, I think they really really hugely implemented that this semester for the first time. And there was some confusion still. Was it the students' problem why they were confused? Was it administration's problem why they were confused? So what do you think? When you're talking about security, anytime you put confusion in the mix, there's going to be some security issues. If it's not straightly spelled out to a student on day one, when they walk through the door, somebody physically gives them a piece of paper, walks them through it step by step. 9 times out of 10, most students, sadly to say, is not going to get it. It's going to be a month down the road before they actually get the information they should be getting. Okay? So what are some stumbling blocks or weaknesses in communication then with our email systems? And I say it plural. Do you think of any weaknesses that you've got communication-wise?
I wasn't thinking weaknesses, I was thinking every student has to go through the new student orientation.
Mhm.
Talk through setting this all up.
Now, does every student go through that?
I thought every student was required before they could go to class.
It's only for online classes.
Yeah, online classes, and I will say, now,
No.
it's not you can't force a student to go through that class, if I'm not mistaken. It is a highly recommended class or to take, and some instructors can say, before you take my online class, like you mentioned, you have to go through this. But I know a few of my online classes I don't force my students to go through because I have students take the class that live in other states. And so I don't force it because of that.
You're talking
So-
about the in-person one, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's because my wife went through that. Like, I've been going to Rock Valley on and off 10 years.
Right, you were grandfathered in,
Yeah,
I'm guessing,
so-
right?
Yeah, and this kind of a funny story here, we're talking about security. So I had a functional online services user ID,
Okay,
but I had no function to get into Eagle or
Okay.
the other thing.
okay.
So I was like, okay, so I call up 2 or 3 times, finally got a hold of somebody. They did almost no verification of who I was. I gave them my user ID.
Oh, wow.
And I think the lady even said, I'm not usually the one who does this. And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'm calling the number that popped up and said I should call.
So you don't have to physically go over with your student ID card now to walk through. If you missed a class or you missed orientation, you don't now have to go with you used to have to go with your student card to actually get into the system. You don't have to do that anymore? You can just call in?
You can't do it over the phone anymore.
You
They
can't.
let me do it in June. So.
In June, they let you do it. Was anybody else allowed to do it over the phone? Be honest, were you allowed to
I had
do
to go to the desk in the student center
and bring your ID?
and show them my ID.
You gotta show your ID. Good, that's a good thing. Now, when you went to this desk in the student center and showed them your ID, was there any confusion on that end? On how that
They said
worked?
you're in the wrong place.
They said you're in the wrong place.
Yeah, so I had to go somewhere else.
Okay, so you go somewhere else. And was that your fault? Was the instructions given to you fault?
Well, the instructions say to go, to the whatever desk, and that was the only desk that I saw. That was my first time here, so I was like, what the hell? So
Okay.
that was it.
All right.
Yeah, you have to go over here and down and,
Okay, so it was confusion and instructions of how to get there.
yeah.
Now, to get into the systems itself, was there confusion to you? Getting in, once you had the passwords and all that good stuff?
If you've been on a computer before, I don't think it was
Okay.
too hard. But
Now, I want you to put yourself in a student's shoes who are non-technically minded for a second. Put yourself in the shoes of students who are non-technically minded now. Not like you. I'm talking non-technically minded, which the majority of students that go here are non-technically minded. They don't delve in networking, security, and love to hack on computers all day long. They have other things to do, and there's not a big interest to them. So put yourself in that mindset for a second, okay? You guys are the type, if I tell you to do this, and this, and this, if I miss a step, you'll figure it out. You will, you'll figure it out. But some students, if there's a step missing between, like, say, you give them 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and maybe you forgot to tell them step 6, they'll stop at step 5 and won't ask a question. They're like, I don't know what to do. They just won't ask a question. Okay? And we've already, some of the things that you see going on is because of that. So, again, weaknesses, could you say maybe communication to a new student or even an older student that's been here could be an issue with as many systems as we have? Or how many thinks it is a non-issue and no students have any problems with any of our systems? Now, believe it or not, there are some admins that believe that here. There is problems. There always are going to be problems. And, I was in that shoe for about 2 years. And we had to tackle these problems and meet with students and be honest about the issues. And let's change them. Let's make it better. And so that's what this dialogue is about. Because you will be in the position one day to where you will have to be making decisions. And you can, like at the end of the result here at the sheet, you can either make a decision regarding what to do about it. Like I said Tuesday, some choose to hear all the input, and at the end of the day, do nothing. I've heard all your input. I understand the problems. I understand the concerns, but processes don't change. Okay? So this whole process is to help you understand the fact that yes, there are some weaknesses, and we've already, just through the little discussion we've had here, communication. Definitely.
I blame that on the teachers.
Communicate on the teachers.
Well, because I'd say 99% of my classes, the first day,
Mm-hmm.
they all ask you, do you know how to get into Eagle? Do you know how to get into the mail? If you
Right.
don't, then they'll help you.
Right.
But that other 1% of the teachers that just never asks.
Well, let me ask you this, or let me throw this scenario at you. Say I teach an English class, which I don't. I don't have computers in my classroom, which there's a number of classes on campus that don't have computers in their classroom. Maybe an instructor station, but that's it. All the students are sitting in chairs. If I'm that type of instructor, my first thought, or maybe I don't think it at all, of what you just said. Have you gotten into RVC mail? Have you gotten this, that, and the other? Now, personally, I do believe as an instructor that students should be prepared. And I spent some time the first few class sessions making sure, as you just mentioned, that everybody can get in. But I have stumbled across students that have been here for 2 to 3 weeks and are still struggling with what's what and what is this email for and what's that email for, and they're confused. Okay? Now, faculty and administration, I believe, are doing a good job with the best information that they have. But I even think then, to try to get it across to every single student that walks across, and that's the goal, is pretty hard to do. And we can talk about pie in the sky solutions, and that's what this whole process is about. Perfect solutions in a perfect world, this would work great. But that's a good thing. You've got to do that. And so, yes, faculty, are there some faculty that maybe are in the dark on these procedures? Yes. Either they want to be in the dark, or they don't care, or they don't have the know-how, and so they feel inept in that area to train students in that area. So they say, hey, go to the IT people or whatever to get help, type thing. Okay, it might be a response possibly. And so,
I
yeah.
understand
Yeah.
that. I just
Exactly.
think, that each teacher though should that first
Yeah.
day or first week.
Right,
And then, yeah, like you say, if they don't know or they don't wanna know, that's fine, but
exactly.
tell us where to go.
Well, also too, there's discussion amongst faculty on student responsibility. The students should figure it out on their own. It's part of learning, part of life, part of growing up, figuring it out, right? And there are some colleges and universities that totally go that route 100%. When you show up day one, there's nobody to direct you anywhere. It's your job to figure it out. Go to every building, call every number, whatever it is you have to do. It's called life.
You think people going to Harvard get spoon-fed?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. There are some student responsibilities involved here that there are reasons why some faculty then back off totally with what I'm talking about and say, it's your job to figure it out. You're a student, part of the student success process is figure it out yourself. And I get that, I definitely get that. The one thing that I am against though is making procedures such that it's confusing to even students that want to figure it out and want to find out how to do this, that, and the other. And I have heard that it's still somewhat confusing on the communication process, especially if they're not getting mail now, or if they're a student that's an older student that's been here a couple of years, and the system's changed, they're not getting any prompts or whatever because they can't get into a system that gives them the prompts possibly. So there's a whole spaghetti type of thing that could go on and on and on. And also, I don't know if you've heard of this term called the silo theory, which means every area in college and in life has a silo theory, every business. Everybody has their own little area and their own little silo, and all we care about is our little silo. Okay, it's working good for me. I don't know what your problem is, but I'm great. Okay? Or, if you have a problem, I understand that, but I really can't help because if I walk out of my silo to help you, I'm messing up my silo and my little world here. Okay? And that's one thing that this exercise gets you to do too, is kind of, you say, well, I'm not in admissions, I'm not in admin, I'm not in IT, I'm not in all these different areas, online services, Eagle. But you need to put yourself in their shoes to understand possibly what they go through, what their thought processes are, to be able to better understand network security and ramifications of risk analysis. Okay? Risk analysis, you're never going to have 100% security on any system. But can we always do better and make systems tighter, better integrated, better communication? Definitely. I believe every semester we do a little bit better, and that's no different this semester. We'll learn things, we will learn things that we already have this semester that we will apply next semester on communication. Better communicating to students that are grandfathered in from prior semesters, better communicating to students that lost a password, better communicating to students that do not ever come to campus, but are new students that, like I have a number that are online students that don't live in the state. How do we communicate to them about these processes and procedures? And so there's a lot of things. Let's go to the next one. Eagle. We have an expert here in class, so maybe she can help us a little bit. Eagle issues. I know we have that's outside of campus. Were there any confusions on Eagle logging in and getting in the first time? And if so, what were they? And specifically, think about, is there any security ramifications that you can think about with Eagle? As far as your initial username password, how was that given to you? How did you come about knowing that? All that good stuff. So, yeah, go ahead.
If you were doing it at home, and hopefully you don't have some keylogger already in there checking you, otherwise that'd be a big security. Because the first time you sign in, you're changing your password, setting it up the rest of the way.
Right.
If you were hacked, somebody's gonna have it all that very first time.
Because there is on the RBC Eagle page, correct me if I'm wrong, a network password change section, right? Where you can go in and change your password, or the first time you went in to the system to initialize that password, right? Correct? And you have to answer a few questions, yada, 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 go through this, that, and the other. Any security ramifications besides keylogger you can think of, that's on that whole system set up for Eagle getting in the first time? Anybody? Or do you think it's pretty good? Any weaknesses?
I can't remember, it's been so long.
Well, even between now and then, or then and now, anything that you've seen that might be a security issue that you've seen?
You never get asked to change your password.
Okay, there's no prompt at any time to force a student to change a password. Okay, that could be one, yes?
The default password was S, your birthday, and asterisk. You know somebody's birthday, you can probably get into there,
Okay,
and you know their number, their student ID number.
so fairly easy maybe on the password to find that information out if you research enough, correct? Everybody agree with that? So let's go ahead and put in here, let's go ahead and put in here the first one here. The only one I could hear out of the whole bunch was probably password. That's a big one maybe as a weakness.
Well, here's the other thing. You were
Yep.
talking about having students in other states. Yet they were just mentioning the fact that you can't call in to reset things. What about these people that are in another state?
Oh, exactly, yeah, definitely, yeah, that's an issue. That's an issue.
If they can't show up at the desk and get told to go to the other desk.
Well, just so you know, as a former IT director, there's always exceptions to the rules. Definitely, there always is. And even though we have rules in every one of these entities we're talking about, I'm talking about Eagle, online services, and RBC email. Every one of these areas have rules, but I guarantee you, every one of these areas have exception to every rule for whatever purpose. They have to function. They have to function in the real world. Okay, everything's not black and white, and so there are some gray areas when it comes to all the stuff we're talking about. So we'll say on this one, we'll leave it at password. Anybody think of anything else? Password, initialized password, birth date, kind of maybe be changed a little bit. Now, we're going to get at how we're going to do this stuff in the end. So be thinking about what are some things or logic you think Eagle could use to make it more secure. Don't give it to me now. We'll do that at the end. Let's go to the next one, online services. First time getting into online services, any security issues you could think of on getting in that first time? Anybody? Password, initialized, same as Eagle. Birth date correct? Because it's the same database, I believe, for authentication for that. So we'll put password on that one. Now, is the email the same? RBC email? Password the same? It's all the same? Okay. So we'll put that up there too.
Oh, I got one for online services.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's still the same, but at one time, I had multiple passwords that could work on my account.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
On every account or just online services?
on my online services.
Just on online services. Interesting. Well, I know that when they merged it, it was merged from, because online service was totally separate at one time, like a semester or two ago. It's all integrated into one, so that might be the case. They might have kept that old password in there just in case, possibly. But yeah, that could be a security concern, definitely. So multiplicity of passwords, right? Same username, but different passwords, right?
Multiple passwords.
So we'll just put, we'll just put multiple passwords. All right, pretty good. Good discussion. Let's go to the next one. Break down. So you've got, we went over this Tuesday a little bit. The asset is, we talked about you yourself, your personal information, your character is the asset. The value of that asset, which we've not talked about, which is actually one of the first steps you do when you realize what the assets are. We talked a little bit about Tuesday. The value of you personally is your worth, your financial worth. Not only to the college as a student, financially getting money to pay the bills and pay faculty and pay employees, but also that same asset, which is you, taking that and destroying that asset could cost possibly millions if the college was sued. Or, if it was egregious enough offense to you that you got the right lawyer and the right, case lawyer and judge, you could get, quite a bit of money. So the value, we could say, is the millions per student as an asset. That's pretty big. That's pretty important. And you never, in IT, one of the things you don't ever take lightly is money, okay? Especially in today's economy. And when we're talking security, everything, and when we get to the last step, it'll even become more evident, but anything to make something more secure, do you think it takes more hands-on involvement and thinking or less hands-on involvement and thinking from the departments? What do you think? More. I've been there. A lot more. Okay? And you ever heard the term more with less? You heard that term in business? So when these new procedures come in, and they will come in, regardless of where you work in IT, every year they'll come in. When these new procedures come in, they're not going to give you more help. No. You're just going to get more responsibility. Okay? So does that make the employees happier? Does that make the employees disgruntled? Does that make the employees more willing to help the customer? You think? Probably not. And so even though procedures come in to help the security aspect, it's dumped on a department a lot of times. It's already stressed as it is. And believe me, every department here on campus is stressed, like every other campus in Illinois and the nation for that fact, with what they're to do, financial budgets. Am I going to have a job next week? From faculty down to the janitor. Okay? It's a crucial, critical time. And students feel it. You guys feel it. You know what I'm talking about. The financial pressure. Okay? And when you have the financial pressure, is security the first thing on your mind? What's the first thing on your mind? Who cares? Right? The first thing on your mind is, I've got to pay my bills this month. I could care less if I have a password security that everybody likes. I've got to have food on the table this week for my kids. Right? What's more important? It's a no-brainer, right?
You can't put food on the table without a job.
Exactly. That's where it comes down to. That's where the rubber hits the road. When these policies come in and procedures come in and people will bucket, and when I'm talking about people, departments will bucket, definitely, because I've been on the push end of here's what you're going to do. Nobody likes it. Nobody, from managers on down. But what it does is hopefully help the security process in the end. Okay? There's always somebody that's got to be the bad guy. And the guy that everybody hates every once in a while. Okay? And as a manager, if you're ever a manager, how many's been in management positions here? Anybody? Supervisor, manager positions? Okay, those of you that raise your hand, were you ever hated or not disliked at all? Okay, how many parents? Anybody parents in here? Anybody parents? Or you have responsibility over any group of people ever? Any group of people you have responsibility over? Okay, that's pretty much everybody in here then. Then everybody that's raised your hand then, were you ever disliked or maybe even hated, might be a more extreme word, but disliked in the decisions you made for your group? Yes?
No, I was
Oh, okay. That's going to happen. It comes with the territory. All right? So let's look at the 4 steps to the intrusion tree. The first is, I put down here, these are 4 levels. The level 1 is actually getting the asset itself, getting the information, which would be getting the email account, getting into RBC Eagle, getting into the email, getting online services, getting maybe your student records possibly. We could go on the asset information. But the first thing in every asset is the attacker must get the key. Now the key in this instance is what? What are the keys in this instance that we're talking about?
ID and password.
ID and password, right? We've already discussed if you're a novice hacker, not really going to take too much to figure out passwords in this environment, right? If you really want, if I know your name and I know how to use Google, more than likely, I'm going to be able to find some public records that have your name on it and also your birth date, if I look hard enough. You can pay $30 and do a background check on anybody. I don't know if you knew that. You can background check on anybody. If you have $30 in your bank account, you can get a background check that will give you the birth date of anyone. So if you didn't want to do a Google search and you didn't want to do research, all you need to do is a $30 background check and find the information within 5 minutes online. Okay? On anyone. Now, so the key is a password. who and what are the threat agents. We've already talked about that. Students, faculty, admins, outside resources, China a few semesters ago. The weaknesses we've already talked about. Weak passwords, weak communication. Can we do better in both? Yes, we always try to do better, but we, each semester have to be improving on all these. I will tell you on the password issue, I remember the discussion last semester and the semester before, was because we were going to a one system database, meaning Gmail, Eagle, and online services all on one database, it would be too much to do all three entities and also have a brand new password scenario. Because there was a lot of cool, inventive password suggestions, but the administration thought it would be a little too cumbersome for students to remember all that. And it might be the case possibly. So, weaknesses we've already talked about. Passwords, communication, calling in, and now if it happened to you, it probably happened to a few other students that they did the same thing and were able to do the same thing. Like I said, there's always exceptions. I'm sure that was not the rule for that area when you called, but they made the exception because that person that's over that was out, and they just did it. Okay? I'm doing it. Joe's not here. I'm in charge. I'm doing it. Okay? I'm calling the shots. Whatever the rules are, I'm making them my own.
Called lunchtime.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right. Now, intrusion. The doors here are getting smaller and tighter, and over the years, I've been here going on 13 years now, but there still needs work and improvement on any risk assessment. We're doing it for these entities here, but we could look at any entity at your home, at the place you work, and we could find weaknesses, just like we're finding here. Okay? No system's perfect. No system's perfect. And that's why it's important to go through this. Then finally getting to the asset and getting that information. Now you figure out, okay, what are we going to do with this information? Now let's discuss that. What you're going to do once you've set up the tree, and once you've figured out the assets and what the values are, the threat agents, who or what is the source of the threat against the asset, you'll create an asset tree, an attack tree. Then comes the resolution. Okay? Some of you will come up with a resolution that says, yeah, I think it's okay. I think we're okay in this area, in this area, in this area, but that's not going to be a good enough answer. I want to know why you think it's okay. Not just you think it's okay. Okay? So if you think everything is great in all these areas, I want to have a logic behind why you think it's okay. But majority of you are probably going to think every area needs a little improvement, and here's what my thoughts are on that. That's what you're going to tell me. For passwords, it might be okay. We're going to have a truly random password created for every student, and here's the processes and procedures I think we should use to do that. And there are systems in place in every location that allows you to do. Every bank that you've ever banked with has a random password creation for you now. For the most part, used to be your social security number. It used to be that here, but believe it or not, that was your initial password, your social security number. They had to change that a few years back. So you can think of processes and procedures on that, that first setup account, that wizard to set up your password. Maybe put it in that screen, kind of like setting up your account on anybody set up a new online bank account recently in the last couple of years? Went through an online bank kind of setup. You have to do not only your password, but you have to do a keyword, a picture, choose a picture that fits your, and then every once in a while if you're on a different computer, or every time you're on a different computer and access your online account, it says, okay, what's your picture? Answer a question or two here that you gave us. And by the way, are you going to access the online account in the future with the same computer? So that might be a scenario that we can implement here on campus that you'll put as a suggestion. Okay? Questions?
Well,
Yeah.
I was going to add to that, my bank, sometimes I do it from different computers, and it'll send my phone a blank text message
Oh, okay.
with a key phrase.
Right.
Or
and you gotta enter that
You
in.
have to enter that in and then
Oh, I
your
like that.
password, and then it'll allow that computer.
I like that. That's a good idea. That's a good one. Yeah. And don't we already have RBC alerts on campus? Because I think I got one the other day. Did anybody get that on your phone the other day, the testing?
Mine the other day.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, we could, we already have that system in place, so maybe just using that system we already have in place to do what we're talking about for password reset or whatever the case may be, or initializing a password, whatever the case may be. So a lot of cool suggestions you could think of. And so you're gonna come up with 3 to 5, minimum 3 resolution. The reason I put 3 is 1 resolution per entity, per asset, which would be email, Angel, and online services. I mean, we've already come up with 3 already tonight, which is password, right? Everybody agrees on that. We can definitely need something different on that. Some security changes on that. And then you might throw in there communication. Somebody gave a suggestion of, on external students coming on campus or never coming on campus that live in other states. How do we communicate with them? Students that are grandfathered in that have been here for 4 or 5 years, or you hit and miss over the last 4 or 5 years. How are they communicated to if they're not brand new students? I know brand new students are forced in certain circles and loopholes now for training purposes, but if you're not one of those that fall into that category, you might be missing some pieces of communication on different accounts. So there could be some thoughts on that. Any questions? So hopefully I've given you enough information with this little exercise, and you guys got great feedback to where you can go through this fairly quickly and respond, with a paragraph 2 response on your 3 to 5 resolution. And that's all I'm really wanting from you is the resolutions itself, not how you came to the resolution. This process you should do on your own, but in the Dropbox I want the resolutions for the areas, each one of the areas. Okay? And again, that resolution could be do nothing and here's why, or do something and here's why. That make sense? Okay? And you can actually do the same process wherever you work, in whatever area you work. You'd be surprised what things you'll find. Because do any of us like to be honest about our process and procedures? No. Why is that? It takes stinking work. Okay? Not only that, but if you've developed the system yourself, this I found out myself personally. If I've developed a system myself, I am not going to be the one doing the risk assessment. I'm not. I am not going to be biased. I'm going to be totally biased about it. All right? And some of you, ask questions to, if you work in an area and you've developed a system yourself, or you've worked in an area a long time. The longer you've worked in an area, I found, you guys have found this out of working jobs a long time. The more you're in a position, the longer you're in a position, the more vested you get in that position. And things become what I like to call your baby. Okay? You have your baby projects that grew up and you raise them. And by God, it's good. Okay? And nothing's wrong with this baby. Just kind of like some of you are parents in here know what I'm talking about. Okay? The other kids, they got problems. Mine don't. Okay? And that's not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing to be that way. I'm that way with my kids. And every parent probably is somewhat that way with their kids too. So it's not a bad thing. But to actually get an honest assessment, you kind of have to sometimes, I've had to over the years, and I do now all the time, just step out, have somebody come in and do it, swallow it, take it, make changes I need to make. And it's a healthy process. It really is. The only thing I can relate it to is, a term I can relate to is a cleansing. It's a cleansing type of thing that happens. And you do grow with it. It does help you grow. It does help you be, it's not that it just helps the security aspect, but it helps you grow as a person. Because anytime you take constructive criticism or suggestions on things you can do better, and you actually make those changes, it does make you a better person. Believe it or not, it does. And you might not even agree with some of the changes. And you don't have to accept all the changes. But you do need to implement some of them. Does that make sense? Kind of pick and choose which one you want to implement and do it. Some of them might take a couple years to implement. You might really have to really dig deep and realize, okay, I really need to change this procedure, and here's why we need to change it. It might take a while to do. It might not just be a month or two process. It might take a year process and training employees. Okay, guys, we're getting ready. We're doing it, you know, I've done it this way with big changes. We're gonna take 6 months. And every month we're gonna have an incremental training each month that leads up to the new release or whatever. And at that last month, we're gonna have a big party celebrating it, and everybody's that was involved in the project's going to be involved, and we're gonna recognize them. And so everybody's involved, everybody's, you know, excited about it. And it's, because I've done it the other way too, and you guys have worked at places where they've had process procedure changes, to where you walked into work on Monday, and you got told new systems. How do I do stuff? I don't know, figure it out. Here's a book, read it. Right? Have I had that happen to you before? Is there a training manual? Is there a training manual? No. Create one. We need one. Good job. Thanks for suggesting that. Okay? You're elected. Okay? And so we've all had that happen, and that's not a good way to do it. Have we survived those? Definitely we survived. You know, we learn stuff, and it makes us stronger probably. But we don't want to do that every time, and don't want to go through that every time. And so I like the incremental type system where you make changes ever so lightly. Now, if it's the one thing on this whole thing we've discussed tonight, what would be the one thing that would be like pretty critical that you would think we need to, this definitely needs to be tackled for this we got to do something here. What do you think? If you could pick one thing out tonight before I let you go, of everything discussed, what's one thing that in all of our systems that we got to do something, we got to get our heads together and figure out something to make it better, make it more secure. What would one thing out of everything we've talked about? Communication. Somebody says communication. Anybody else? The one thing we really got to do, I like to say next semester. If you were the boss of this place and you were the one to say, okay, we got to do this and this is why. This is real critical. Yeah.
Change birthday passwords to an invalid password. Like if you just tried to log in next semester, your birthday was still your password, it would read invalid password, please put in it.
Okay, so you're talking about the default asterisk, birthday asterisk, is that what you're talking about? That password? Okay, and then it will prompt you for a, yeah, because that was one of the suggestions that was tossed around was not just a birthday password, but every password. Day one on first semester, they have a trigger, whatever that day is, prior, on the semester date, when everybody logs into the system, everybody's forced to change the password, regardless, because it's either a clean sweep or pick and choose, which is a nightmare to do it that way. It's either clean sweep or, and granted, would IT and faculty and you guys who students know stuff about tech would be overloaded with questions and hey, what's going on? How do I do? Yeah, that it probably would be the case for sure. But that was talking. It's kind of like pulling a Band-Aid. You got a sore, you just rip it, right? So that's one solution. So does everybody agree? Email might be the password issue might be one. That's what I'm hearing. Communication. That fits into it well as well. Yes?
I don't know if this would actually be a problem, but one thing that's sort of annoying is emails sent through Eagle to an Eagle account will duplicate it to your Google email.
Yes.
But Google emails sent to Google won't duplicate to Eagle, so sometimes you'll miss important messages.
Exactly.
Google.
Well, like if you guys send me an email in Eagle, right, it copies me and my RVC. If I do a reply, you're not going to get it. You're getting it in the RVC email, but some students are telling me they don't get it in the Eagle, which I think they're supposed to be getting in the Eagle if I do a reply, right? I mean, that's what they're supposed to. But again, who knows? The same students I've asked, when I say if you log into your Gmail account, what? They don't know there's a problem. Okay? What? What are you talking about? right? Because they, you know, they're only on Eagle possibly, they don't even use RBC anymore. Anything else? Okay, we're all done. Go forth and assess in the risk assessment. And if you have any questions, give me a holler. Otherwise, see everybody next week.
Hey Chuck, come take a look at this pop-up on this.
Okay, be right there.
Anytime you can.